Good evening. Welcome to Athens City Council. This evening is Monday, January 10th, 2010. It is on or about, 2011. There is a typo on mine.
It is the 10th.
It's the 10th, but it's 2011. Take a look at your agenda.
Oh, it's the 10th.
The always officious, never makes a mistake, Debbie Walker left us with a mistake. It's January 10th, 2011. It's on or about 7 p.m. This evening, City Council is going to be meeting in a public hearing and then into a series of four committees of council. The public hearing is to consider a recommendation from the Athens City Planning Commission to amend the Athens City Zoning Code to include a definition of, quote, total lot coverage, and the table of bulk controls to include a total lot coverage maximum of 60% in R zones, both R1s, 2s, and 3s. That's what this public hearing is about, to hear input from the public on their views about that. Mayor Weil.
Okay, this is from a recommendation dated October 28th of the last year. I believe you discussed it at your Planning Development Committee November 22nd. The thrust of this is essentially that we do not have any legislation in our code that does general lot coverage. We have buildings, we have garages, we have gazebos, and decks. Really the concern is down the pike we're going to be getting, in the future we're going to be getting a stormwater management plan that's going to be required of us. We don't know when that's going to come into effect. I hear everything from 2 years from now to 7, depending on who you talk to. Stormwater management, of course, requires that we have to have some place for permeable soil, and we don't look at that as it stands now. We did a series of meetings, discussions at the Planning Commission level, Athens Planning Commission level. We did actually had Bolo do some GIS modeling of what fits right now within the city and does not fit, is not conforming. For the most part, the R1s and 2s fit quite well. There's not a problem with this. You'll be seeing, as it stands now with bulk control, you have 30% lot coverage in an R1. This would add another additional 30% for your driveway or your patio, any impermeable surface. We kind of went away from the impermeable surface concept because of the nature of soils we have here, which can be clay or not clay. Really what we want to do is that we want to make sure that we don't have total lot coverage from lot end to lot end of concrete, which would create more of a problem for our future stormwater management plan. And again, this is just the first step, a tentative step, but the idea is to look at saying, okay, what do we look at when we're building a building or getting a zoning code together? And that's pretty much it. I made some copies of the recommendations here. I also have a sign-up sheet for anybody who hasn't had a chance to sign up as public.
And we ask both those that are wishing to speak before council and those that are just in the room to sign that they were here tonight during the public hearing. Are there those wishing to speak before council on this issue? Everybody's in favor of it till the third reading, when they've never heard anything about it. Member Sands.
I have a question about how it's, I guess especially in R3 zones, the current city code requires a parking space per bedroom.
Yes.
Obviously this lot coverage limit would limit the number of parking spaces that could, although I can see now a lot more 3- and 4-story buildings, because you could stack them up and not do that. So is the housing code, are some other codes, should we be looking at some other codes at the same time?
That's a good question. If you remember, the comprehensive plan talked about increasing density. They actually speculated doing, from 2005, speculated the concept of increasing density to make an R4 zone, so to speak. The difficulty when you talk about trying to increase density, we're still stuck to that 180 square foot parking space. Actually, we're having a communication with a developer who's talked a little bit about they're close to campus. they would like to preserve the green space, and they want a variance as a PUD for reduced parking. I think this is one of the things that's been kicking around, at least in my administration, mostly with Paul Logue in particular. We will never get to a density we would like if we continue to have to build a required parking from the 1997 ordinance, which said one parking space, one bedroom. The question, of course, is what kind of policy would you put in place? The two philosophies, and I believe it was, I'm mimicking one of the former council members, Carol Patterson, who looked at this when she was on Transportation Committee, saying, should we be making parking, should we be accommodating every parking space in every car with a parking space, or should we make it more difficult? Early in my administration, I was looking at trying to tie together a waiver, a fee in lieu of parking. An informal discussion with the law director said that's really, you can't do that. You could do it for a fee, but the idea the fee would have to eventually go into a pot of money to build a parking garage. My concept was to throw money into our public transit system. What we'll have to look at right now, non-conforming wise, a lot of the sections of Mill Street and Stewart, the larger buildings that have been built up, have a question of where they're non-conforming as it stands now. This does not mean it's impossible to do anything there. Again, in theory, any nonconformity with the zoning code can go to the zoning board of appeals, as you know. Whether to change that mix, the one space and one bedroom, one space, is right now being discussed at the the planning commission level. I would actually say we might want to look at that. Not that I want to say we eliminate it entirely, but we look at it in terms of proximity and what kind of housing we have. This, again, was part of the comprehensive plan, saying, this R1, R2, R3 zone, B1, B2, B3 should be a little bit more parsed out depending on where it is within the city. In other words, there are some places that, contextually, you could say a B3 is Stimson, a B3 is East State Street. There are different animals entirely in what kind of scale and what kind of construction you want. So we don't know the next step on this. My focus right now is to try getting ourselves in place for the stormwater management. We can't pave over everything. We have to have some way of recognizing open space, green space, permeable space versus concrete, and that's really my first step in this. I think we'll look at the parking requirements case by case. We'll probably have to draw up a policy of some kind in terms of proximity to campus if we're looking at housing, student housing in particular. But that's just one member of the Planning Commission right now. We do not have consensus on that, and we're still discussing it.
Okay. My only thought was that maybe we should be discussing more than one of these ideas at the same time. I'm afraid things might get out of sync.
Well,
otherwise.
Member Bain.
Out of sync or out of sync.
Oh,
Well,
Chris.
I want to point out that we're going to also talk about this at the Planning Development Committee. So I want to make sure that this is a public hearing, and I want to make sure that we get
Okay,
the
I'm
input
sorry.
from the public before we start really discussing, because
Well, I kind of waited, no public was speaking.
so but it's also on our Planning and Development Committees, and there are guests here who
Okay.
are kind of scheduled first. So I want to. Can we
Good point.
wait for this?
Good point.
Sure.
For any public input?
I just wanted to, but I wanted to ask the mayor if he thought that, I thought that the parking space thing was a density decision. I mean, it's one of the ways that we keep the density where it is.
Can we wait?
No, I mean, but he said that, and I just.
I know,
I-
but can we wait for the committee meeting to do this so that we can get the people who are
We
here
can
as
wait.
guests?
Are there other members of the community that wish to speak to this issue? And really, a public hearing is for public input, so seeing none, let's call to an end this public hearing, and this discussion will be picked up about 2 committees away. Thank you all. Now on to Community Issues Committee. Chris Nisley.
Thank you. Tonight we have several presentations. Those listed on here include the
Who's first?
Disabilities.
Is it-
Pardon me? Yeah, the Disabilities Commission will be
Disabilities,
the
I think,
first
first.
one, Randy Morris, and followed by 2 other ventures that are related to community issues. and we have somebody helping us with getting the PowerPoint presentation set up. The other presentations that we'll be having tonight will be with the Live Healthy Appalachia Initiative and also Beautification Day. Mr. Morris, welcome.
Thank you. I'll be brief. The ordinance that was passed in 2004 that established the Disabilities Commission, the Athens City Disabilities Commission, requires that the commission report annually on what we're up to. So I'm here today to give you a report on what the Athens City Commission on disabilities is doing currently and who is involved in the commission. You see on the screen the commission. There are 9 appointees to the commission, all volunteers, obviously along with Mayor Weil and Councilmember Sands are on the committee. And we meet the 3rd Wednesday of every month at 5:30 in the basement of Oblenis Hospital. The mission of the commission is obviously to represent the interests of the those in the community with disabilities, make sure that they receive a fair hearing on their issues, that folks are looking out for possible problems that they may encounter in the city, and to make sure that ultimately they have the ability to have full participation in the community the same as anybody else. The ordinance that established the commission established the powers and duties of the commission to make recommendations to the city, to your body, of course, act as a liaison between the members of the community and the local government, respond to questions, and we do a lot of consulting, obviously, with the mayor and Councilmember Sands attending the meetings. That's reasonably easy to do. We also work grant issues if they come up that involve disability issues, and as we're doing today, submitting our report to the City Council. The things that we've been doing since I've been involved with it, which has been about 2 years, the commission hears concerns related to disabilities, and I'll talk about a couple of those in a moment. They've gone out with members of the city staff working sidewalk and street issues that may be of concern to people with walkers and with wheelchairs. Assess housing issues for persons with disabilities. We've been involved, we've gotten involved here recently with opting in, if possible, to reviewing plans for developments so that we can, from a disability aspect, review whether potential plans make sense. In other words, there are laws, that dictate what the requirements are for accommodating disabilities, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the plan as developed is as good as it could be. And if you got the input from people with disabilities, it could be better. And so we've been given the opportunity to look at some of those plans and make recommendations. We've also been involved with the sandwich sign ordinance, the issue in town with sandwich signs on sidewalks. And we also have been involved with the annual Disabilities Awareness Festival that's put on by other organizations in town. We have a display at that festival in March every year. We also, one of the duties we think is reasonably important is rewarding people who make accommodations to those with disabilities so that others are encouraged to do the same. So we do solicit nominations for and make public presentations of accommodation awards. And there is some consideration to coming up with a Designing Universal Disabilities sign competition that may be happening in the future. We held a Challenged by Choice Disability Simulation Day in May of this last year, in which the mayor was one of the participants, as several others, I think it was a total of 10 community individuals, were given a simulated disability, and they had to deal with that disability an entire day. And at the end of the day, we got together at the community center and had a really productive discussion among those with disabilities and those who, with the disabilities that were simulated and those who simulated them, to really home in on what the issues are that affect those people on a day-to-day basis. We also keep a web page on the Athens City website. We keep a link to service providers that those with family members with disabilities can use as a source. And we monitor national standards, make recommendations on disability issues. Those awards I mentioned, we've given 8 so far. You can see the recipients of those awards. Again, for those whose day-to-day job involves serving those with disabilities, that doesn't preclude them from receiving an award from us if their service to their community goes above and beyond what's required of them in their job. So you'll see people that among the recipients who do work in the service to those with disabilities, but because they went above and beyond what was expected of them, they were still recognized. And you'll notice the top one there, Rick Frame, Athens Athena Grand Theater. They have a program where they allow those with disabilities, developmental disabilities, to come into the theater, work for a while, and then attend a showing of a movie. And it's a program that has been very well received in that community, and he was recommended and approved for the award. Here you see the commission presenting publicly the award to Rick Frame and the Athens Grand Theater for their work with the program I just mentioned. And at the Disabilities Awareness Festival in March of last year, we gave an award. That's Larry Jagaman, if those of you are familiar with it. And I don't know who the guy in the middle is. That's the woman seated is Petey. I don't know if any of you know her, but she's one of our members. And the award was given to Lifetime Service Award was given to Catherine and Frank Hare for their work with those with disabilities. Current issues that we have before us right now, there are several. We just learned of one today, at least I learned of it today. The Rotary is, the afternoon Rotary is considering a large playground facility, which will be built in a way that will allow those with disabilities to use the facility. And they have a 2-year plan to upgrade the South Side Park with that kind of equipment. And pretty extensive fundraising activities. We're going to get involved with that at our next meeting next week for the first time. Because you saw one of our members is Carolyn Lewis. She has gotten us on the WOUB Studio B program, has done that several times, and hopefully we'll do some more in the future to discuss in an interview setting issues that affect local folks with disabilities. And I don't know whether you know Dan Schoonover or not, but he has raised an issue with the commission about the wording of signs for handicap parking spots. This is an issue that has been brought to the Ohio legislature in last year's session, but it didn't reach a vote. Hopefully it'll be reproposed this year. It's an ordinance that was passed in Cincinnati, and it basically says that if you have a handicap sign, if it uses the word handicapped or disabled, that they would prefer that those words not be on there, that it just mentioned the fact that it's accessible and uses the universal symbol, which is the wheelchair symbol, the blue symbol with the wheelchair in it. This is an issue we're talking about, and we may make a proposal to City Council that a similar ordinance to the one in Cincinnati and to the Ohio Revised Code issue that's before the legislature be adopted in Athens. The picture I'm showing right there raises another issue, and that is this evening I was hoping to have one of our commission members, Robin Briganti, who drives a handicapped van. She is wheelchair bound, and she has a van that uses the lift device. And she's raised the issue that I believe is not something that needs an ordinance, but it perhaps needs some public awareness. The picture you see there is at Walmart, and the sign, I've got it blown up there on the right, says van accessible, which does not communicate van only. There are 4 spots, and she has brought out the point that because those are very nice parking spots, they're the first to be filled rather than the last to be filled. And when she goes there with a wheelchair van with a lift for a wheelchair, there are none of those spaces available. So we're looking at seeing if there's something we can do to raise public awareness among the community that uses the handicap parking passes to free up some of those spots so that when folks in the community who have lift vans get to places like this, there's one available. Obviously, that is not a lift-equipped van. That is a very small, tiny car, which could have used any of the handicap spots that are also available at Walmart. There is one spot in town that has a van-only spot. It's right across from City Hall, right in front of the garage. And that sign, I don't know whether you can read it or not, but it says lift-equipped vans only, but as it would happen, this is a city sign. And to notice that on the sign with the wheelchair symbol, it says handicapped. So it has the word that has been proposed by Dan Schoonover as perhaps something we want to take off future signs. We've discussed this with Andy Stone, and he's perfectly willing to do that within the provisions of the Ohio Revised Code. And we're only, if we propose this to City Council, it will only be as the signs need replacing. So there would be no expense to the city. It's not a replacement just for that cause, but when it is replaced, it should change that. So with that, I will close and ask if you have any questions.
Any questions from council members? And the mayor?
I've been attending quite regularly the Disabilities Commission. Thank you, Randy, for doing this. One of it is to bring awareness of the disabilities within our city and the needs. The Challenge by Choice, which we'll probably do next year, we're looking for volunteers, of course. It was half a day, not a full day, which has worked out for me quite nicely because it was pretty intense in that sense. Finding out I was pretty much deaf for the day. I have an easy job compared to other people because I can always delegate, so I don't have to really be answering the phone directly. But again, it comes down to the awareness of everybody who is disabled, anybody who has a disability. One of the things after the meeting was the concept of tabs, which we all are, temporarily able bodies. We will all be there eventually. We won't have a choice of what we have, what our disabilities will be someday. We don't know when that will be and how it would be. So I think this is the commission is an important has an important function, both in awareness as well as striking a chord with what works or does not work within our city. The ADA laws say you can have with works out, but if you talk to some of the people with wheelchairs, they put a van accessible van, I think, with the space on the wrong side of the van. So it doesn't work. There's many things that sound good, fit the code, but don't really function in terms of common sense and for the people who have to use them. Did I cover that pretty much?
Yes, you did.
Okay. And again, I think I'm glad that you gave us a chance to do this.
I'd like to thank Jim Sands and the mayor for participating in the commission. We really appreciate your participation.
Well, thank you, and thank you for taking the time to make this annual report and all of the commission members' efforts to educate us, educate the community. This is a real service, so thank you so much for coming. Okay, next we have Mr. Tom Kostarich. While he's handing out some papers, I'll give a brief introduction.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Kostarich is I'd say the inspiration behind a group of people that are working in the Athens community on a project called Live Healthy Appalachia. And this involves some community events which will be taking place this spring in May. But I think the other thing that's important to know about this is that it's a longer-term effort to, once again, educate us about what's a healthy community and some long-term efforts that we can be making. The City of Athens is serving as a partner in this initiative, and Mr. Kostarich and the Advisory Council have been working with the mayor, with the Athens Community Center, with Rich Campitelli and Andrew Chicky, and he's here to tell us a little bit more about these efforts so that we're all educated about what the city is helping to partner with this coming spring. Mr. Kostarich, thanks for coming.
Thank you, Chris. Chris is also on our executive committee. I have 3 handouts. Unfortunately, I didn't have one for the other 2 for everyone else, but I passed out the list of the steering committee and committee chairs and co-chairs for activities that we'll be working on. And I also have a list of speakers that are coming to a summit that will be held in May of this spring in 2011. Back in May of 2010, we met at the City Rec Department and had about 90, both the community and university representatives there to talk about how we could build a community health initiative. Live Healthy App is the brand that we came up with. There have been some great pioneers in our community that have done a lot of good work. A lot of course, the Athens County Health Department, Ruth Dudding and her folks, and Jana Lee Stocks, a lot of different folks in the schools and in the community that have worked to continue to make people aware of what we need to do from a health perspective to improve the health and well-being of individuals and organizations in our community. My background is in health insurance as a consultant for small businesses. We all know what the cost of health care has done and is doing in our country, and it will cripple the United States if we don't do something about it. And chronic diseases represent about 2/3 of the cost of our health care in the United States. This year we'll spend over $2.6 trillion on health care, and it's estimated that about 2/3 of that are in chronic diseases that can, in fact, be reversed or prevented with lifestyle changes. And sometimes we think that we're doomed because of genetics. We certainly do have a much higher chance of chronic diseases if those genes run in our families. But that means we have an opportunity, if we work harder, to actually prevent or reverse those diseases. And so, again, our vision is to try to make people aware and also to help improve the health and well-being of both individuals and organizations in our region. It's not going to be an easy task, but it's something we have to work at. It'll probably take 10, 20, 30 years before we make the changes that we're hoping to make. But with the committees that we've put together and the folks that we've got behind us, with the support of the mayor and the city, hopefully tonight I want to educate you folks a little bit more about it and ask for your support, both just from the awareness point of view, and if there are any ways we can contribute, that would help us too. But we've got the university, both the College of Health Science and Professions, the College of Osteopathic Medicine, or other deans that have been interested in helping us to support this. So we've got the County Health Department. About a month and a half ago, we got the support from the superintendents of the schools, all the county schools and the city schools. So we've got a collaborative effort here, a coalition of groups that may be unprecedented to try to, again, renew the efforts that many people have been working towards and try to brand this Live Healthy Appalachia and see if we can take more steps and perhaps build a few more brush fires that will make our efforts successful. What we want to do in May is we are bringing in a series of very renowned speakers throughout the United States that have dedicated their lives to prevention and reversal of chronic disease. They'll be coming in. We've got targeted audiences. We're going to offer continuing education for healthcare professionals. We've got a segment for employers and community leaders to talk about worksite wellness program, and another track for social outreach organizations and clergy. And on Friday, May 20th, we'll have 3 tracks of these lecture series going on in different areas within the community. And then on Saturday, we'll have a lot of those same speakers coming in to the community center. We've reserved that room. Rich and Andrew have been very helpful in that. And we'll open that up to all the community members in general. We'll have a lunch for them, some demos on healthy cooking and reading labels and shopping tips and dining tips for people to understand how they can look for perhaps heart healthier meals and cook a little bit healthier. And in addition to that, if you look on the back of this, we've got about 6 or 7 other committees that have been formed that are going to be working on activities that will hopefully sustain this effort in the coming months and years. For example, tomorrow we've got one of our speakers coming in, Dr. Antonia Demas. She's going to educate. We've got 7 classrooms in Athens that are interested in piloting a program. It's a food is elementary. It's a curriculum, a food curriculum that will that Dr. Demas has done in about 2,000 schools in 33 states. So it's a very proven program. We're going to put it on here in Athens, and our hopes are that we'll show, as she has in all our other schools, some significant results because of that program with elementary school children, and the attitudes about nutrition and food that they'll bring home will stimulate ideas for their parents, and that's a beginning for what we're doing. That would be an example of one of the activities from one of the community committees that we're going to be putting on. So our hopes are, again, that we can continue to add different programs throughout the year to build this awareness and to begin that assault on these chronic diseases. I think I'd open up for some questions now, and again, if there are monies available in any area that the city could contribute to help support either some of these activities or partially sponsor one of the events that'll take place in May, we would certainly appreciate that. I'm not here tonight primarily to ask for funding. I'm here to thank the support we've gotten so far from the mayor and the work from the community center, make everyone aware of it, and then, again, if there are ideas or thoughts from you that we could take back to our committee, we would certainly appreciate that.
Any questions from council members? Councilmember Coons.
I'm not sure that I really have a question, but I do applaud your efforts. But I was wondering, we have a tremendous poverty problem in the Athens area. You mentioned working through the schools. Is that your plan for reaching maybe the poverty-stricken parents to send ideas home with their children?
Yes, there's a couple ideas in this way, because we understand there's social economic barriers in eating and living healthy. A couple ideas, and there are some of the schools have done some nice work with gardening. That's a good example of where we've kind of lost the art of gardening in the United States. And back after the war, we had victory gardens, and we were able to sustain our tables with food that was grown from our yards, and we've lost the art of that. And we hope to, through our gardening committee, maybe bring a little bit more of that back, help the schools out with some of the gardening projects they're doing. And the university has supported that and will lend help and manpower to make that possible. Our healthy dining choices and eating choices, we hope to build some heart-healthy, very cost-effective cookbooks that we can put out and show folks how. I think originally people say, well, it's very expensive to eat healthy. And in one sense it is, in another sense it isn't. It's very expensive to eat some of the junk foods that we eat, and perhaps over time maybe we can help with the farmers market and maybe find a way to get coupons to give out to the needy folks to be able, and that's been being done a little bit at the farmers market now, that we can bolster that effort and show our community that, there's a way that we can give back to some of the more needy folks.
Thank you.
Tom, what is the expected attendance for this conference? Do you have an idea?
We're looking at, again, and we're just in the process of sending out save the date for that, but we're looking at probably bringing in somewhere in the area of 100 to 150 healthcare professionals. We expect to attract somewhere in the neighborhood of 200 to 250 employers. And this would not only be in Athens County, this would be throughout southeastern Ohio, and probably our third segment would be about 150, and then on Saturday we hope to bring in a couple hundred folks to that event.
And if you notice the handout he gave, it'll be in various locations. It says Irvine Hall, a local church to be determined, I assume.
Yes.
Wesleyan Church, Christ
Yes.
Community Wesleyan Church, as well as
The
at the community center.
Community center on Saturday, and yes.
And my conversations with Tom has been that the idea is to set this off so we have this as just not a one-shot deal, but sometime to do this yearly if possible, so we have a track record and we do preventive health over time in our area. I think it's a good possibility to actually take everything up a notch up in terms of healthy lifestyles, especially for this area. Preventive medicine at its best.
I think healthcare in general is, we're spending more time trying to treat diseases rather than try to find out what's the cause and how do we cure diseases. And that's something that we all can be educated a little bit more about.
And I think this makes a nice correlation then to the Healthy Communities Award that the Ohio Department of Health and the city worked on a year ago, and we received that award from the Ohio Department of Health. And that's all about that same kind of thing, long-term kind of changes in attitudes and practices, and then potentially, policy kinds of changes too. So long-term effects for the community.
We did present to the Ohio Department, Health Department in Columbus 2 or 3 weeks ago, and they were very impressed with our progress so far, and are interested in helping us, trying to help us with some policy changes as time goes on. I mean, we have to take baby steps to start with. Getting endorsements is great. Now, starting activities, changing attitudes, that'll take time. But we've got a lot of very enthusiastic people in our community, and we want to ultimately build a template here that we can take out to other communities throughout Appalachia and then move into other areas. So lofty goals. We need your assistance. We appreciate your support. You are a partner of ours, so it's important for us. So again, maybe at some point in time, we can discuss if there are any monies available that can help out. We would be happy to accept that. If not, again, we're happy to be here to explain everything to you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming tonight.
You're welcome.
Okay. Next presentation that we have for the Community Issues Committee tonight is Beautification Day. This is an annual event that the students at Ohio University have partnered with several other organizations and with the city, and it's been a great event, and we're glad to see you back, Brad, to give us some details about this year's plans.
Thanks. I know I'm kind of a late addition to the agenda, so I'll try to keep it as brief as possible. Have some background info. Kind of wanted to explain a little bit about Beautification Day and how the city can help out again this year. The event started in 2006 and has grown basically every year since then. Our goal for this year is to recruit 500 volunteers to volunteer on 25 different projects and raise approximately $5,000. Part of that money comes from hopefully local businesses and business owners that have seen the benefits of this project in the community, and also we're hoping that City Council can get involved again this year. The event is going to be Saturday, April 16th. Check-in will begin at 11:30. It will be at the Scripps Amphitheater on College Green, and we'll have a kickoff pep rally about 11 o'clock, and then we'll divide up into our groups, and volunteers will head out to begin on their different projects, and then we'll have a wrap-up about 3 p.m., or just as volunteers complete their projects, they can come back, and hopefully we'll have lunch for them and drinks, and everyone can kind of hang out and then head on their way. Volunteer sign-ups this year, we're making it possible for volunteers to sign up online through a free service called Eventbrite, and I have the link there. I just wanted to show the volunteer sign-up page real quick. It's kind of basic right now. We just launched it a few weeks ago, but volunteers are able to go in and register. It gives all the information about the event, and then on the next page they can click register and put in their name and email address, and then also there's a place where volunteers can designate an organization that they'd like to volunteer with. Say, for example, Student Senate. Hopefully we'll have a large group of volunteers, and everyone can designate right there, I would like to volunteer with Senate, so then different groups can work on the same projects together as a team. And then there's also a place where volunteers can put in their t-shirt size as well, so hopefully that'll make that a little bit easier. We have different sponsorship levels that businesses can get involved with, and they each have different benefits, publicity that comes along with it, and also every volunteer receives an event t-shirt, and approximately half the funds that we raise are going to pay for the t-shirts for the volunteers as well. We'll also have window clings available for sponsors as an added benefit, and that way businesses it'll say, proud supporter of Athens Beautification Day 2011. And we're hoping to get students as well as community members involved. We'd love to have families and, maybe some kids, so it won't only be university students taking part in this day. Our planning committee is divided up into 4 teams to kind of tackle all of our goals. We have a fundraising team, a volunteers team that will work to organize the volunteers and recruit everyone. Our projects team that will work with community members and organizations to kind of focus in on what projects need to be completed and what supplies will need to be allocated for those, and how many volunteers will need to be working on different projects and things like that. And then we also have a PR team to get the word out and advertise about our day. We have a senator from my commission, the Off-Campus Life Commission of Student Senate. We have 4 senators each heading up a specific team, and then we also have our interns involved as well. So Council has always been a big supporter in the past, and we're hoping that you guys will consider helping out again this year, and I can answer any questions or anything else.
Any questions? Well, this is certainly, I might comment that this has certainly grown from the initial presentation of a few years ago when there were some basic ideas, and it looks like you really have the organizational structure set up ahead of time and lots of people involved with it. So I commend you on the work that you've done already on this. It's very impressive, and I know that the city has been very appreciative, too, of the kinds of projects that have gone on in the past. I know that the local schools have benefited from this, that there have been plantings. I know that sometimes, although it's not quite as popular an activity with the students, we really appreciate it when things get cleaned up, like the mulched areas around the trees downtown. It just makes the city look
Graffiti.
so much brighter. And graffiti removal, that's always, that's been
And
helpful.
we're always open to, excuse me, we're always open to, looking into different ideas about projects that need to be done. And I wanted to add, too, that I've had a meeting with the mayor and also President McDavis, and they're both contributing letters of support to our group, and hopefully we'll include that. We will include that in our sponsorship packets for business owners, and that'll add a little bit of legitimacy to our work.
Okay.
And you are soliciting for projects as well as funds?
Correct.
Okay. And it's mostly online, which is a little bit of a change. They've done away with the website, which is a little bit outdated, and they've made it much more streamlined. So the intention is to get people involved via email, via online, but also early on in terms of projects as well as support and volunteers. And I say that because we all work with neighborhood associations, and we need to perk it to them for their assistance, as well as both in projects and sweat equity, as well as money if needed.
Can you give us the web address again?
Yeah, it's beautificationday.eventbrite.com. And Eventbrite makes it really easy for us to incorporate social media. We're able to tweet our link, and we're able to post everything on Facebook, and we've created a Facebook event for our day. So we realize that all the students are online anyway, so hopefully this will make online registration that much easier as well.
Great. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for presenting tonight. And I believe that's it for the Community Issues Committee.
Okay.
I'll get that support letter to you by the end of the week.
So let's move on to Safety Services Committee, Committee Chair, Sherry.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have with us tonight Fire Chief Robert Troxel and Fire Captain Kenneth Gilbreth, who are going to enlighten us regarding the ladder truck, proposed new ladder truck. Thanks so much for coming tonight. Could we start off by, perhaps you could explain the need for a new ladder truck? Some folks are questioning whether or not it's really necessary to purchase a new ladder truck now. So if you could sort of go over the reasons why we need a new ladder truck. Gary Bruce. He was the inspector, wasn't he?
He was fire captain. He was came through the ranks as an inspector, and advanced to a ship captain. Retired as a ship captain. But, I think he left our service in about 1992. So he's been retired for some time. Anyway, back to your question. The need, I guess, is certainly subjective. We believe that it's important to be able to protect 7,000 students that live on campus in dormitories, which the majority of are not sprinkled. Majority of those dormitories are 4 stories or higher. Many are 5 stories, especially on the South Green. Even though they're 4 stories, they're built really with the floodplain restrictions that require them to put a lower unit. So in essence, it is 5 stories that we're having to protect. So you're looking at 12 to 15 foot per story times 5 to 6 So you're now looking at 70 to 80 feet vertical height, and when you look at a 70-degree angle or more, then you're escalating that height on up into the 80 to 90 to quite possibly 100 foot. One of the things, if you remember, those of you who have lived here for a while, remember we went through a period of time where we were burning basically everything on Court Street. I think most of you
I
can remember
remember
that. There's a lot of holes left on Court Street. And in 1986, we developed a new tactics and strategy at the fire department. And part of that tactics and strategy was able to deliver large volumes of fire flow, water, if you will. Part of that strategy is ability to utilize an elevated stream. Elevated stream comes from our tower truck, which is able to provide twin turret nozzles at 750 gallons per minute per nozzle. That gives us a tremendous ability to certainly control better these large fires. And I will say, since 1986, since we developed that strategy, we have not burned anything on Court Street. We're lucky, the strategy worked. It doesn't really make any difference. We haven't burned anything. So I think that's certainly a plus, and certainly shows a need for that elevated device. That device is approximately 22 years old. We know historically that ladder trucks, when they hit 20 years old, due to their sophistication and complexity, that they tend to wear out. We know that we've already replaced the engine in it once. So we know we've had transmission issues with it. And I don't think that's uncommon for a piece of equipment that runs every day, primarily. And unlike pumper trucks, which we run 10 years and then replace them, then move them into reserve status for 10 years, that allows us to get 20 years out of a pumper truck. We have no ability to do that with a ladder truck. We have to run that for the solid 20 years. We have no second ladder truck to move into the reserve. So consequently, that truck has run double what our pumpers run. So it puts a tremendous amount of hours on it. We have, the last count that I knew, we had 49 structures 4 stories or better in the city. Many of those are university buildings. And certainly, my opinion, and I don't think anybody isn't aware of my opinion as far as the university's responsibility in helping maintain this piece of equipment. It's not uncommon. We know Kent State has helped with their fire department in providing ladder protection. I think due to the expense of this piece of equipment, that's certainly not a question that shouldn't be pursued further. We know we have X number of dollars in our budget. I brought that forward to Mayor Abel probably 5 years, at least 5 years ago, when we used to have capital replacement plans. We really no longer have those plans. I could have told you just about any year when a piece of our equipment was going to be replaced, needed to be replaced. We know that, like I say, the 20-year time frame, that's what's projected to Rick back then. And I know he was making preparations to provide funding for that.
Would the current truck be traded in?
Sorry?
Would the current truck that we have now, would that be traded in on the new
The
one?
problem we have with that truck now, it does not meet any of the NFPA standards. And one of the big issues with the piece of equipment we have now, it does not have an enclosed cab. Consequently, cannot put firefighters in it under the new NFPA specifications.
So it would not be kept as a backup
I think the cost of maintaining that vehicle, plus where do we keep it? We spent a tremendous amount of money on just shoring up the station so the station doesn't fall down. It was decided that by providing a bay capacity of 70,000 pounds per bay at headquarters was realistic and cost effective. The trade-off is it limits you on the aerial devices that you can specify. If you go with a steel ladder on an aerial device, it puts you way over the 70,000 pounds that those bays can now support. So consequently, we had to stay with an aluminum ladder, which is not a bad thing, but it did limit our abilities to specify varying types of equipment. So, again, back to the need. We can only tell you as fire professionals that we believe it's something necessary. You're going to have to decide if the funding's there and if it's an important purchase for this city. I know I brought the captain with me tonight. The captain was in charge of developing the specifications with the truck committee that was formed. I believe we have a member on each shift of the truck committee to provide input from the shifts, and certainly the captain can provide any technical answers, I think, to questions you may have as far as specifications, design applications, and things of that nature.
I do have a few questions myself, and then council might have some other additional questions. They did receive a copy of the
State bid,
the price schedule.
the state bid schedule.
Yeah, they do have copies of that, and I had a few specific questions, Captain Gilbreth. It's a long list, and so I won't go through the whole list. First of all, could you enlighten us as to what, I assume that STD means standard.
Standard, yes, it does.
But what does IATS mean, and what does IPOS mean?
Where's that at?
First
Third
page,
column.
same column as the standard.
Something you guys probably know.
That's a good question. You know what that means?
Not a clue.
Okay,
think
I'll
it's
I'll move right along then to
abbreviation for something,
to my
I'm not
next
sure what.
question. But anyway, we're right about the STD as standard.
Yes, it is.
So on the first page, it has cab, 56 inches flat, standard, and so it's standard, so there's some
Right.
additional cost. But under that, it has cab, TSAL, et cetera, and it says IPOS, and we're not sure what that means. And that is an extra $3,096.33.
Right.
So is that, as the chief mentioned, is that for to get an enclosed cab, or?
That's to get an enclosed cab that you can actually, it's a 10-inch higher cab. It's a raised roof cab. So you can get in it and get your air pack and your equipment on.
So you need
You
it
can
to
stand
have
up in
more
it.
room for
Right. Yes.
storage and so forth. Okay. And then on down, it has deluxe console, standard, no extra cost. And under that,
Right.
it has deluxe console with notebook holder, $280.
Right.
Do we really need a notebook holder?
It's something we use every day. I mean, it's where we put our books, and when we have a fire, we keep our reports there, our papers there.
It's actually, it's a compartment.
It's a,
So it's not really just a holder, it's a storage compartment, is that right?
it's a storage area compartment.
Storage area.
Right? A compartment, basically.
And then several pages back, regarding the engine, it's marked Cummins, ISL 9, et
Right.
cetera, and that's an additional $13,351. is that a matter of safety?
That's a matter of horsepower, one, there's a lot of hills in Athens, so we have to have a higher horsepower engine. And it's also the 2011, they have new EPA guidelines, which increase the price of the engine that much.
So this is connected with EPA guidelines
It is,
as well?
it is, yes.
Okay. And then I wanted to ask about the tires. Standard is Goodyear, no extra cost. But for the front wheels, Michelin, $266 times 2. And then on down for the rear tires, Goodyear, no extra cost. But Michelin, $997 times 4.
Right.
Can you tell us why? You know, I hate to be
Because
nitpicking, but
Our trucks now have Michelins, and we get the wear from a Michelin compared to a Goodyear on our trucks. To me, it's worth the money. I mean, I guess
so we get that
that's the
much
reason.
extra wear.
We do,
Michelin
yeah.
is just a better tire.
It's a better tire.
And we get that much. We get that much more out of it.
Plus they handle
They
better.
do
The Michelins handle better.
We've actually, in the past, we've actually purchased Goodyear tires, and we've had to take them off because they simply will not handle on the type of streets we have here with these big rigs. So the Michelin tire has worked best for us over the years. That's what we run.
And the Goodyears do, like the chief said, the truck will just kind of fish around like. I mean, it's just really unstable with Goodyear tires.
So with our hills and maybe when the streets are slick, are the Michelins then much better than the Goodyear?
They are in both good weather and bad weather. Either way, they're just a better tire.
Okay. I'm not going to specifically ask about any more things. Other council members might have some specific questions. Nancy?
I'm not going to ask you about any of the things on the bid, but what I want to know is, when will you be asking us for the next pumper truck? I mean, because we have, you can talk about capital improvements all you want, but we have been working to save, and we only have $640,000. I mean, that is what we have right now on a line. It was two councils like this, taking small amounts of money and putting it together. We haven't had a bake sale yet. And so, but it's, you know, and that won't do it, obviously. But I'm concerned that what we're going to do is say, okay, we have to double that price, we'll have to borrow it, but then you're going to be back here saying, I right now need another pumper truck, because it's on my capital plan. But, you know, capital plans are wonderful, except that what we didn't have is any kind of financing line until this council and this administration saved that money. I mean, the university is not going to come over here and give us $640. So what I want to know, do we have if we go borrow $640 and pay it back over 5 years, 10 years? I mean, will we be buying a pumper truck too? That's my concern.
Probably 2017.
Okay, so you have a window of about 6 years in which, okay, the next question is then, Chief and Captain, what if we have to lay off a fireman in order to pay off the cost of the truck?
I mean, that's, you know, those are decisions that I don't make.
Well, in a certain
tell you-
sense, you're doing full court press on us about, you know, Michelin's versus Goodyear and all the rest, which is, you know, more information than I wanted. But I'm a little concerned about this, you know, I mean, do we need people more or trucks more?
Again,
And I hate to even ask you.
You know,
It's anguishing.
it's a difficult, you know,
It's
question.
a serious, I mean,
Hey, you know, if it wasn't serious, I wouldn't be here tonight.
well, yeah, I mean, I don't know. But 640 divided by 6, I mean, that's going to be how much money each year with interest. It's a lot of money to be paying off. And if we put it on 20 years, then we won't be able to buy the pumper truck for a longer period of time. So, you know, I don't know. To convince me, you don't have to talk about tires, but I want to know how this capital plan can be altered in hard
I
times.
think pumper trucks, we have a better ability to extend the timeline.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason being is we have 4 pumper trucks.
Mm-hmm. I remember seeing one over there that you said was the next one to go, to the big scrap heap in the sky, yeah.
And we
How
have,
much do they cost? How
I'm
much
sorry?
does how much does How much does a pumper truck cost?
500.
500,000.
Yeah, we could buy one now,
I
probably.
think we could buy the pumper truck.
So,
And put a notebook holder on it and good tires.
but at least we have,
And a ladder.
at least we have the opportunity with pumpers to be more flexible with adjusting our capital. With the ladder truck, we really don't have that opportunity. When it gets to the point to where it needs to be replaced, we don't have other ones to fall back on.
What did we do when the engine was replaced? Did we borrow one from another fire department, or
Well,
how
we
did we?
really pressed the Williams Detroit to really hurry. And
So we were just without one?
Consequently, it wasn't down very long, and we were able to get it rebuilt fairly quick. We know, right now we have 2 shorter ladders that are available, one in Nelsonville on the Plains. But we also realize there's probably a half-hour delay at least getting those ladders to us, probably longer. So it's really not it's better than we used to have when we didn't have any aerials in our county, certainly, but now it's, and those are straight stick aerials versus we have a platform that's certainly more functional for our city. So, we have backup plans and things like that. They're, it's not like operating someplace like the suburbs of Columbus where you can have 6 ladder trucks at a drop of a hat. We're sort of at the mercy of what we've got and try to expand the life of those things as much as we can. It's unfortunate they're so expensive. We knew that. We knew when we bought it in '89 at $500,000, $550,000. It was expensive then, and we held off with the old ladder we had until the brakes failed and we almost ran it through the complication center. That was probably the point that councils finally said, we understand it's 20 years old and it needs replaced. We don't want to get to that. We do a lot of maintenance on it now, and we spend a lot of dollars on it. Try to keep it as safe as possible. However, it is 20-some years old. And it's just like a vehicle, a car. As the older it gets, the more prone it is to failure. So, and back to your question, Nancy, I don't know. Is it more important to have a firefighter, or is it more important to have a ladder truck? It depends. If you have a fire,
An old
in
rickety
one of the dorms, and we got to rescue 20 kids, then obviously it's more important to have the ladder truck. On a day-to-day operation, it may be more important to have the firefighters. So, I'm not trying to waffle on you.
Well, I don't know the answer either. That's why I was asking you. But I was really concerned that as soon as we get the order in, the next thing is you're going to be giving us the full court press on a bumper truck. And I just, it's not in the picture, man.
Let me assure you, this will be the last time you see me back in council.
Well, that's easy. I can say the same thing. Yeah, well, that's good. That means we can count on you for 20 more years, eh?
But I think, not to belabor the point, but just remember that we have tremendously more opportunities for flexibility on pumper trucks than we do with tower trucks.
Okay,
Just simply because we only have one.
it's better.
Mayor Nisley?
Just a question about the 49 structures that are more than 4 stories high. Would you give an estimate for us of how many of those are university buildings?
Majority.
75%?
80%? 75
Probably.
to 80%?
Really, the only structures that we have more than that are, basically Court Street and some surrounding areas with churches and things like that. Really don't have a lot on the east end as far as multi-story structures. So I think when you look at it, you're going to see the majority of them are certainly university buildings. And I'll tell you, we have some mega structures anymore that are on university properties. You look at Baker Center, we had 3 fires there during construction. I mean, serious fires.
Yeah, they had serious
That had we not had a ladder truck, we would have.
It was a human problem, I believe.
Yeah, so that's why I was saying, I've been, and I understand what Nancy says, that our chances of getting in my university is probably slim and none, but nevertheless, it's certainly,
Could we declare it a bowl game? It's just like, all right.
But,
It's just like,
to me, it's still, it's the majority of what we have to protect with that ladder truck, and I think that.
Do you have a
like it or not,
list?
They have to throw in.
Chief Troxel, could you get us a list of the places that we have to protect that over for?
I'm sorry?
Could you give us a list of buildings? The
Oh,
buildings?
absolutely.
Okay.
Sure.
To add, to help us to make our judgment.
Yeah.
Member Falk?
I was wondering if, to help us understand the bid more, can you kind of prioritize what you really, really want and what you need and what you wish for?
Well,
Is that, something that you could do so that we can look at it if we have to make some tough decisions, given, $10,000 or $15,000?
what I had instructed the captain, and he can certainly comment on this also, was to keep this thing as low ball as we possibly can, because we knew the dollars were going to be tight. If you look through here, you can see page after page after page of options, which are not on there, they're not highlighted. We took and looked at what we have now.
So you think that this bid is the most stripped-down version that you can come up with?
We could probably strip a few more things off of it, but, it's sort of risk versus what we have, and some of those things that we utilize. And let me give you an example. Light tower, operating in a nighttime environment is extremely dangerous. By utilizing light towers, it's able to illuminate the area that we're working in. It makes the environment safer for the firefighters. Could you eliminate that? Yeah. But then what we end up doing is stringing electric wires along and putting portable lights out. And so, yeah, it's a trade-off. And is that a nice thing to have? Well, yeah. But from a safety perspective, it's something that we need to have. And I think everything, as we went through these specs, there was a lot of things that the shifts came up with that would have been great to have. Compressed air foam system, $40,000, $50,000 option. Yeah, it would have been super to have. It's the latest technology, but we can't afford it. I mean, it's we're talking $1 million plus here for a vehicle, and a lot of these things you just simply you can't do it. And so I think we stayed within what was reasonable. I know the captain did an excellent job developing these specs. His committee did a great job. They brought them to me, and I reviewed them. They looked good. The things that I was concerned about, number one, would it fit in our headquarters? And I mean, I can remember from the first one we bought, there were horror stories about chiefs bidding ladder trucks, and they're arriving, and they couldn't get them in their stations, or they were too heavy. So, I mean, so we looked at that. It met the specifications. It met the load requirements of our newly renovated structure. It was less than 70,000 pounds. It met actually, this tower is shorter than the one we have now, so it's more maneuverable around the city, but yet it extends another 10 feet. So it gives us more feet of vertical elevation, but yet it's shorter and more maneuverable. So all these things we looked at and tried to develop a set of specs that were the best for the city, but not the most expensive for the city. So.
Thank you.
Hi, thanks for coming to entertain us about this fire truck. I mean, obviously, this is a huge priority for us. That's why while cutting city positions, we've managed to save a considerable amount of money to help pay for this. I have a couple questions. One is, I noticed on the last page, the warranty. It comes with a 1-year warranty with an optional 2 or 5. And, personally, I would seriously consider adding that as an expense to this, to extend the warranty. But has the department had any experience with this
We
company's
usually go with
trucks,
the
or-
1-year warranty because it's standard, but,
Right.
I mean, if you have $13,000, I mean, it would be great to extend it, yeah.
And I mean, do you have
Certainly.
any experience with this company in terms of reliability? I mean, Is there any indication that this would be necessary or useless?
It's dollars.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, and like I say, we're trying to hold the cost of this vehicle as low as we can, and yes, would it be great to have a 3-year warranty or a 2-year, extended warranty? Absolutely.
This is a
We
very
have-
good company, isn't it?
Sorry?
Isn't this a very good company that produces a quality product?
Yeah, Suffolk's been around 100 years. I mean, they're a local company, basically. They're 65 miles up the road. So, they are a good company. We've had good history with them. But there are warranties on transmissions and other components that extend beyond 1 year.
Okay, good. That seemed a little
Yeah,
short to me. Okay, so that's just for the, bumper to bumper.
I mean, even personally, I don't like to spend dollars on warranties. I think we've had good success with our vehicles early on, and
Well, and if the drivetrain actually has a sufficient time period that's covered, then I don't see that as a necessity. The other question I had was, what is the total price? I'm looking at a couple large numbers on the front here. Is that including the options or not? And there's a couple different large numbers here, I guess one with pump, one without. So that's the base, and
That's
then
the
everything highlighted is
You want
additional.
tires on it?
Right.
And what's the final number? Maybe I missed it earlier, I'm sorry.
Well, what I have here is 1,058,000,
Okay.
but
and that's what we believe to be relatively close. We know there's, and I keep getting calls that there's a possibility of price increases, and we know that, but the base cost was approximately $1,050,000. I think Kenny's $1,058,000. So,
Member Sands, did you have a question? I'm
I
sorry.
had one last one, I'm sorry. I know this is a state bid, so theoretically the prices should be the best available to us here in Ohio. Are there federal bids or any federal purchasing that the department has access to?
not that I'm aware of.
That might just be
pretty
police
much tied to
department,
state bid pricing or bidding the piece of equipment. And we find here over the last several years that state bid pricing is about as good as you get. I mean, they've got to whittle down so they can be competitive with other manufacturers.
Thank you.
Member Sands, did you have a question?
Actually, both of my questions were asked by Member Gosney and answered, so.
Any other questions?
So if we order, what's the turnaround time? If we were to order tomorrow, say, let's go, when do we expect to see something like this? Would you know offhand?
I'm not sure, do you know?
About a year.
A year, probably, yeah.
Okay, so really we're anticipating for a whole year to construction. The other thing is, you're saying there's no trade-in value whatsoever?
No, I'm not saying that. I think the question was, are you going to trade this in? There might be some trade-in value to it if they stripped it out and got rid of the cab and used different, I don't know. That was something, what we normally do when we bid a vehicle is we put a trade-in option into the bid specs and ask the vendor to please submit a bid, an optional bid. We don't have to, we're not tied to taking it. We look at it and say, well, that's, God, we could sell the tires for more than what they offered us, then we back off of it. But if it's something that's reasonable, then it reduces the cost of the truck. We've done that with a couple vehicles over the past, and we've also, made arrangements to where the vendor actually took the truck but had it sold. So we were sort of an intermediary, and it worked, and we were able to get maximum dollars out of one of our older pumpers that way. But the best we can do is put it in there as an option bid and see if we get any substantial dollars out of it. I think we can get some dollars out of it, but I don't know how much. And it's hard to get somebody to commit a figure.
Yeah, I understand.
I also want to point out that there's a date that these figures would change on the state. Do you recall what that date is?
I do not.
So,
I'm saying,
Well, it's almost a year old, so.
it's coming up.
yeah, that's what, I have this feeling it's April.
Coming
Says
up.
submitted in May last time around.
I would say by spring, you will see the state bid change.
The mayor's question led me to follow up. You're looking at a year's delivery time. How much money do we need to put down? Half of it?
It depends on how you decide to purchase it. Let's say if we had the money, and the auditor was gracious enough to let us sign a PO. Let's say we had.
She's smiling.
She's gracious all the time, it's just the having the money part.
We could pay a quarter down and reduce this amount, probably. What we used to do was to pay a quarter down and actually buy the chassis.
Yeah.
Buy it up front, they could go ahead and build a chassis. That way, the vendor's not fronting the money to build that chassis and leave it sit there. So whatever the percentage of interest for that money, we saved. And it was substantial. So you can buy it that way. Given our circumstances, you know, if you're going to buy it quick, you're either going to have to do a lease purchase agreement using the $600,000 we have, or borrow the additional $400,000, some change, something like that, or wait till the truck's ready for delivery, and then you might have $700,000. I don't know how much you're generating, but so there's options that you have to look at. We had the a lease purchase individual down. I know the deputy auditor met with them, and they presented some information, in which I really think the deputy auditor felt that it was a pretty good plan, simply because it did not tie capital dollars up for the next 3 or 4 years.
Mm-hmm. Is lease purchase with the same company?
No,
the same builder?
It was a lease purchase with a different company, wasn't it?
Yeah, they bring their own, like sample financier. But what I've heard from the auditor, and she can speak herself, is that she's able to get some of the best rates right here locally.
Yeah, we know that,
balance.
yeah.
So we would, and we've got the money,
So,
and it's for that purpose. We've been working on it for 2 years, so,
Longer than 2 years, hasn't
maybe 4.
it? 3 or 4.
Do we have any people out there in TV land that want to help us with this? Buying an aerial light or something?
Somewhere over on Parks?
Over on Park
Place, right?
Yeah, there we go.
Maybe
So
we
it
can
rides on
figure-
the old one or something?
Yeah. So, as Sherry's going forward on this, who should be talking to the company about how much we'd put down and what the benefit would be? I think everybody here is pretty new. I mean, I remember that 50-50 deal from the past, but how did that get done? Did the mayor call, or?
no, what we've done in the past,
I mean,
is
just-
that
yeah.
was a pretty standard for a lot of companies, to put 25% down to buy the chassis. And you bought the chassis, they were able to build that chassis through that first part of the year and not have any money fronted, and we saved the interest, whatever. And really, back then, you got a better interest rate. Now, I'm sure the interest wouldn't be nearly as good as what we were getting 6 or 7 years ago. But certainly, we can invite the gentleman down that's put most of this stuff together, and to meet with certainly anybody with council that would have questions. I'm sure he'd be.
I think we just want to know what it's configured as, because if we have 640, and we really can't, I don't know, maybe somebody else knows something I don't know, but I don't see us committing any more money to it this year until we know what's going on. What's the most efficient and effective way to use that money to leverage the purchase is what I would like to know. Assuming Kathy can get a much better interest rate than the lease guys were doing. And so maybe Kathy and you and the mayor or somebody, I don't know that it's council, but, because we could probably save money this way, just as you would at home, saying, well, how can I buy this car or whatever in an effective way. So.
But anything, we can do to provide any information, certainly, I'll get you the information on the university structures. That's really easy to get. You just pull it right out of the map.
Your map.
So,
So we may be making a decision soon, right?
I had one last question, and because this is such a large purchase, is it worth putting a bid out to other companies to see if they can beat this price?
well, a couple things. One, it's already on state bid, and the other companies are also on state bid. I mean, you can go to the state bid schedule, and if you want to look at Pierce, if you want to look at an E1 or whoever, they're on the state bid schedule. The problem that we run into is there's very few tower manufacturers that can meet the load capacity that we're now having to use. So the 70,000 pound is the key to developing these specs. I mean, these specifications are all developed around 70,000 pound load capacity, because we cannot exceed that, and that's for a loaded vehicle. So when you start talking to people like Pierce, who, when we developed these specs, made only steel ladders, or other companies that only made steel ladders, there was no way we could fall within the load specifications. There was a couple companies, I don't remember.
E1, Suffin E1.
Suffin and E1. In all honesty, we tried to get the Suffin E1. Didn't have much
People
success.
come down.
So we sort of figured if, geez, we can't even get the
It's not
salesman
gonna come
here to
down.
sell us one, what kind of service are we going to get? So we really sort of backed away from them and went with a known quantity, which was Suffin, and that's the vehicle we have now. And in all honesty, it's held up well. We've gotten, certainly the life of the truck out of it. Anytime we had an issue with it, simply pick up the phone and call, and we'd have a mechanic here. It was something sophisticated, like I say, very quick, because they're only in Marysville, or not even in Marysville, just 33 off of the loop is their manufacturing facility. So.
Can we watch it being made?
Sorry?
Can you go up and watch it being made?
Oh, absolutely.
Field
Yeah.
trip.
They'd be more than happy to give any of you a tour on how they manufacture these. And it's sort of interesting because it's not like most things being built. I mean, these things are literally built from the tire up. They take the tires, they take the axles, they take the drivetrains, they put them together, and then they move along with the cab. And so, I mean, everything is individually put together. So it is neat to watch. And we make usually 3 trips to the factory to check at various times to make sure that our specs are being followed and everything is as we like it.
So if, just to clarify, I just want to make sure, since you made that claim about not coming back and asking for another ladder truck, which is kind of funny. Pumper, but we would be tying up maybe as much as $50,000 out of our budget for the next 8 years in order to do this, if we would pay it off in an 8-year cycle. So we will not see the fire department coming back and saying, and some change, we need a pumper truck tomorrow. I mean, is this kind of a quid pro quo agreement we're making here? If Sherry decides to bring it forward?
What I'm indicating to you, and I want to make sure that you understand, is we get an average of 20 years out of a pumper truck. And we can extend that, a little
That's
bit.
what I want to hear. We can extend that.
Right. I mean,
Okay.
and that, we have more flexibility to extend that than we do the ladder truck. And the reason being is because we move these trucks in a 10-year cycle into reserve status. So it runs first line for 10 years, then we get a new one. That truck is moved over to reserve status, which it basically doesn't run unless we've got one of our lead trucks out of service. So it sits there. So consequently, we're able to expand that time limit more easily than you could on a ladder truck. Because the ladder truck is running every day, and we don't have a reserve status for it. So that's why I said we have more flexibility to expand time limits on pumpers versus ladder.
And that gives us flexibility in paying for it. That's
It
what
does.
and just trying to make sure we were all kind of together on this. I don't know where it's going to end up, but I think it's a good way to think about it. How much will it cost us per year until we buy a pumper?
Mayor Weil.
I'll point out, pump truck, we may plan for not replacing a pump truck to 2017, but all it takes is somebody going through an intersection and somebody not paying attention. And we're
We
talking-
have reserves, though.
Yes.
Mayor, we've been very fortunate on accidents. I really appreciate you not jinxing.
And we have insurance.
We do have insurance.
We have insurance.
We have insurance, but
I don't worry about the insurance, I worry about the guys getting hurt.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, the promises like that, there's,
Right, if we had,
Well,
if you had a
it's only as good as
catastrophic
the reality.
failure, we're still able to function, even with a catastrophic failure, because we can bring one of the reserve trucks up and use it until we can get that vehicle replaced. But if that happens to a ladder truck, you're done. You're out of business. So
Hopefully
that's
that
the
will never-
uniqueness of that piece of equipment.
Anybody else? Thank you both so much for
Sure.
coming.
And if you have any other questions, please call me at the office, and I'll try to answer them for you. Certainly, the captain can provide technical information, probably more so than I can, because he worked on it for about a year developing this. So,
Thank you.
That makes 4 years difference. Wonderful.
I don't have any, the safety committee doesn't have any miscellaneous.
The Planning and Development Committee, we can continue our discussion about total lot coverage. Nancy? You threw. But you were on a roll.
I just, I was trying to figure, I thought always that the parking was an effort to control density.
Are you saying
Myself.
what?
It was a systematic effort to control density, that every single house in this city does not have to turn into a student rental
The
property.
parking, I thought, was controlled conversions of, if you remember, it said
Well, if you say
owner-occupied.
conversions, that's what I just said.
Well, no, okay, when you say density, I'm thinking in terms of density, I'm talking about the overall density that you can put in any R3 right now. You're always going to be limited by, 180 square foot for a 70 square foot bedroom.
I mean, that's a different pattern, but what I was really thinking is, I think R3 was designed to be rebuilt or maybe remodeled, and it wasn't designed to be little bitty houses that are pumped up and given lots of steroids to become 4-story things with all the backyard. I mean, I think it's a different concept from what was initially proposed.
Yeah, and that's why we're talking about 60% total lot coverage. This would say you couldn't you couldn't pave the entire backyard.
I must have misunderstood you, because I thought you were suggesting the density.
Again, the comprehensive plan still talks about the concept of an R4 zone, if you remember. In more intense, more dense. And there's always going to be a limitation what you can do there, because again, you still have to put that parking space there.
As I keep saying to our planner, Paul, the planner, you probably have densities that are more than most people would imagine when you have those 4-unit structures with 2, 3, or 4 floors with 10 people in them. I mean, there's a huge density because they're like 1/8 of an acre. So multiply it through and you say, ooh, it's a lot.
How different is that from a brownstone in?
Well, I don't know,
Office
but they're
or
not all
buildings?
inhabited by, people who have cars and people who drink beer.
And do both at the same time. And
Maybe
you
we
have
hope
lots
not.
of room, right?
We hope not. But the one thing that when you're talking about this, because I have class on Wednesdays, but the one thing I was wondering is how we could get back to, if I'm required to provide a parking place in my rental unit, how come it doesn't go to the person who rents the unit? How come you get to charge them more money? That's the way it works. I mean, the students who are there are not parking there because they
we didn't think of that.
Well, I mean, who would have thought it?
Who would have, but we didn't.
I mean, that's the most fundamental problem I see with parking, that the parking that's allocated to people, I mean, you would think that nobody drives cars, but it's not so.
Who here drives cars? Who
They're
here
putting
doesn't
them
drive
in.
cars?
They're putting them in the Christ the King parking lots that are cheaper than the landlords are charging them. And this would be juniors and seniors and other parking lots like that that are in business to make money. So that the fundamental parking problem is that the parking requirement is not met by the dwelling unit inhabitants. And we are not forcing that to happen. We can thank certain persons from the past for this legacy.
How would you, again, unless you have a parking policeman out there who say, I'm going to look at the lease, which we don't have control over, right? Would look at the name of the lease, say that's that parking space right there, check the license plates, make sure it belongs to the owner or the owner's parents.
I don't think it has to be quite like that. I just think maybe a good faith effort on the part of the landlord community to kind of follow the letter of the law might be.
Okay,
The letter, I mean, why would you say you have to provide parking places if they weren't for the inhabitants of the building? It makes no sense.
Okay, we're discussing lot coverage right now.
No, I know, but it's part of the larger density question, which you
Large
started, and
density.
she wanted me to talk, that set me off. There you go. I mean,
The larger question is, do we strive for a parking space for all? Everybody gets a parking space, pave the planet. So everybody has a parking space whenever they need it, whenever they desire it.
But they
wherever
don't have
they
a parking
desire it.
place because it doesn't come with their very high rents. I mean, the students who are living in these places are charged much more per month. I mean, and I'm probably more aware of it recently because my daughter is renting a place in Pittsburgh and has to have a car to go nursing practicum. And she mostly takes the bus, but, and I will say that I can't envision in an environment like this not having a space if you have to have a car for, what would we call it, student teaching, all the rest of that stuff. That's where I was coming from. It just seems like it's not exactly a fair situation.
Right, but I'm not sure with discussing the lot coverage consideration that we are doing right now, it has impact.
You told me this, sir.
Well, I know. But to answer some of your concerns is that when we're looking at the lot coverage that's on the table right now, is that the primary reason that we are doing this is to do stormwater runoff.
Yes.
And to address some of those issues. However, it does have an impact on density, and that is something that I think parking and lot coverage and some of these other issues all question about density, and that may be something that we need to work together with the Planning Commission is look at these parking issues.
Could you define what you're calling the impact of this on density?
Well, I think that if you have to limit...
For all new construction, right?
Yes. And that's one thing is that it is for new construction only. And so, new permits.
In all 3 R zones?
So, I mean, what it does what it will do is that you can't necessarily max out the impervious surface. So I guess if if somebody wanted to go and build a 15-room apartment complex, and they had room for 25 cars, they can't just max it out for those 25 cars and rent out the 10 spaces unless they go in front of the Zoning Board of Appeals or something.
But they're doing that right now.
Well, this would be something that would
For all the
probably
new ones.
would impact it. I mean, this is to look at stormwater runoff and to address some of those issues, which not only impacts the lots themselves, but also has a lot of off-site impacts, on other people's property and such that we need to start dealing with, and city property.
I understand that the density connection, and I think we will probably end up having a conversation about that sometime this year, or who knows when, but soon. If I recall correctly, I think Paul Loeb put a lot of work into determining the impact this would have, and didn't he say that this would not affect any of the type of construction that's been going on in that part of town?
He said it would affect very few of them.
Right.
But
Okay,
primarily
so not 100%, but basically what's been built down there would still be able to be built. They would just have to utilize parking underneath the building,
Right.
which they've done in some
Right.
some of the developers have done already in some instances.
I think what Paul Loeb was saying is that this would not be an onerous regulation
Right.
on a lot of potential development.
There are 3 or 4 lots that have the parking underneath.
Well, I mean, when you look at the floodplain regulations, that also comes into.
And so I think I don't think this will have an impact on density in any appreciable way. I mean, it's like pouring water through a sieve. It's not going to stop it. And I don't know that that's necessarily a bad thing, but we haven't really discussed that too much. But what it will provide is the stormwater protection for the city. Also, the quality of life, I think, for people that are living in those homes by having that space, the recreation space, the green space, and the open space.
I would agree they're interrelated. I mean, if you start talking about let's do lot coverage and build parking underneath the building, you're relating it to the ladder truck right now. If we have to add an extra floor just to put parking in the basement, you've added a floor. We have a limit, of course, R3s of how, 4.5, I think, 5 stories. Lot coverage, you know, I'm looking at just in terms of runoff right now. That's what we're starting with. And we're not even seeing what we need to do for the stormwater runoff conditions. Those haven't been drawn up. We're just anticipating it. I just know that as it stands now, you can pave from lot line to lot line. You can take your house right now and do it. And because it doesn't fall under subdivision regs or anything like that, or a hillside ordinance, all that water can run off to your next door neighbor until he shoots you, okay, or drowns you, one or the other.
Don't
I don't know
say
what would
shoot
happen
today.
first. So they are, you know, the ideas we're looking at is just to anticipate the need for a place to perk that stormwater.
Well, and I think that it needs to be mentioned that stormwater runoff costs, you know, adjacent landowners, and this is an issue, and I know there's issues out there. I know other people have issues with the stormwater running off into the driveways that causes, you know, washing out of driveways and such. So I think that this is a really important issue that we need to address, and it's part of a long-term planning process for stormwater runoff planning that we are commencing. So.
And all we're trying to do is recognize that there's a difference between just lot coverage as we know as the buildings right now versus lot coverage, the pavement.
Right.
And we're trying to distinguish that.
I mean, I think it's also, if you looked at many of the other towns in Ohio, probably many of them have more restrictive lot coverage, when you really think about it. So,
Okay.
so is there other questions?
So you're going to...
I will bring this up next week for first reading. The second, the miscellaneous that I have is I would like to please ask the Planning Commission to address and start investigating what type of zoning changes would be, the zoning code changes would be required to address the potentially large problem of internet cafes. For people who don't necessarily know, I mean, Paul Logue and I and John Paskey have talked about this, and they came to me and they said there's this internet cafe, and there's, like, northern cities have been dealing with this issue, and I'm coming from traveling in Southeast Asia a lot. There's internet cafes all over, and people think of the Donkey or, you know, Brennan's or something where you go, or there might be computers there for people to use. But what is becoming an issue in Ohio is because of lack of Ohio Revised Code, is that these internet cafes are actually kind of fronts for casinos, gambling. But they're not gambling because they are not giving money out. And I would encourage people, I can send people links to descriptions of these, but people are really trying to deal with them because they're kind of, and right now our zoning code does not deal with them. It deals with things like adult entertainment, but the definition doesn't include internet cafes. And I would like to send the Planning Commission a please urgent letter to start addressing this.
Okay.
So we can bring it forward and change our zoning code to deal with yet another thing that can harm our community values and development potential. That's my miscellaneous.
Okay. Paul Logue has brought it up to the Planning Commission in passing. He gave us some sites that talks about the legislation, but I really haven't looked at it myself.
I think I'm putting a little fire under.
Yeah.
I would like to put a fire under the Planning Commission on this. So, that's my miscellaneous.
Okay. Other stuff? Just Finance and Personnel Committee, quickly deal with elected official salaries. We are required by the Ohio Revised Code, city councils are, to set the salaries of elected officials for the next term. And that ordinance needs to be ratified in effect by the time that, essentially by the time petitions are required to be turned in, which is February 4th. We have one meeting between now and the 4th. So I'm going to be making a proposal about elected officials' salaries, proposed ordinance next week, and I'm going to ask for suspension of the rules. Now, in that ordinance, I have heard a very general consensus among council members that they're recommending no increase in salary for the next term of council. Other elected officials have signaled differently, and so I'm going to come forth with a proposed ordinance that allows those elected officials. Council is seriously a part-time organization of us people. Some of these other elected officials, it's a full-time job, and we need to treat those jobs as we do our other employees in the city. So it'll be kind of a two-layer ordinance. I'll work with Debbie Walker to put it together and hopefully get it out to you.
Are you talking about 1 or 2% for non-members, for non-council members?
That's what I'm suggesting.
No, 1 or 2, I didn't.
Oh, I'm suggesting 2. Because that's what we suggested for our non-union laborers. And we were suggesting that as a place for negotiations with unions. Mayor?
Will this require an emergency clause if we're suspending it? And it has to be in by the 2nd or 4th?
The 2nd.
We could have a meeting on the last Tuesday or Monday in January, couldn't we? It doesn't concern me, but I certainly would.
We could.
Read it twice.
We could read it twice. That's true. We could have a special session at the next following committee meeting.
I mean, because some of the salaries are up in the higher reaches, so there might be an impact fiscally, right? Over 4 years.
Actually, I asked the assistant auditor to give me those figures, and I had them here earlier, but I don't right now. So that's a good idea. We'll read it twice, and that will give everybody a chance to look at this. I'll make sure you all. Obviously, you didn't get that, so I will make sure that that's forwarded to you. So we will. It's a good suggestion. Instead of suspending on first reading, we'll have a special session at the committee meeting on the last of January and read it. Okay.
So without council, you're thinking the president of council would be with council members or would be with?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so that changes it quite a bit. The amounts. Sherry has it. She made the meeting.
She made the meeting. Yeah.
She made the meeting, okay. Yeah. Okay.
So it's a fairly small amount of money with not times 7.
What? It's the same paper that was at the auditors meeting.
About
Yes.
5,000 a year. The first year.
The first increases.
And council's a 2-year cycle, so it can go, if everything gets rosy and the fire truck's paid for.
Yeah, absolutely.
Guys, can you give yourself a- She's laughing.
The last cycle was 3%, about 3%.
Which actually will kick in with the next paycheck would be off
But
that.
we don't have an increase coming up, do we?
Yeah, we do, 3% increase, which we'll see next week, right? Yeah.
Hallelujah.
Okay. Any other questions, concerns about that? We're going to move on. Okay. The auditor has several issues that she wants to discuss. I have that, so, about some bookkeeping issues mainly.
Appropriations that are just bookkeeping, as Jim said. You know, there's a lot to do trying to pull the budget together at the end of the year. And the ones that I'm bringing up tonight are basically grant and TIF money. They have their own funds. This isn't money that we control how it's spent anyway, not in the general fund. 293 is a police grant for Secure Our Schools, and we need to appropriate that money. I gave Jim my paper that has the amounts. It just needs to be moved from the 500s to the 300s because that's where we spend the money.
It's approximately about $110,000 involved in this.
So it's grant money, it's designated, we just have to appropriate in the proper place to spend it. 589 is an ODOT grant, and we need that money appropriated. And then, I think, is it 758, is that the TIF fund?
TIF fund, 593.
593, not even close.
Close enough.
This is the East State Street TIF,
Yes.
which we anticipate brings in about $500,000 a year. But
We didn't appropriate it.
part of that
So,
money,
yeah, part of it needs to be appropriated for the school share that we forward to them. And then the other part needs to be appropriated in the 600s, which we transfer to the East State Debt Fund to pay the state debt. That's what we use our TIF money for. It's already appropriated in the East State Debt Fund, so we don't have to do that one, but, you know, it's just one of those things that we overlooked in the budget. So those are my three main things that we'd like to get in there, so when we get our payments in, we can, you know, use the money. It's there to spend when we need it.
Do you see this needing a suspension?
I'm not sure. I'd have to find out. Yes? Would it be another appropriations ordinance? Probably there'll be other appropriations, and as we knew at the end of the year that we would have a lot of little corrections to make in the budget. So I believe Paula has some also. And as I said, in my mind, this is business as usual. We just have to take care of it and do what we have to do with it. Just have to get it on the books. So I don't know why you would have issues with suspending, but you know, I don't know. Maybe you want to hear what Paula has to I put have out there. prior year bills, and you know, it always happens. And I'm looking at one for, I believe, our workman's comp that went, I can't really explain, but it exceeds the $3,000 limit that we could do administratively. There may be something else that pops up in the next week, but this is something that it needs to get paid. So it does. That's what you're right. I didn't know about that. For more fun, I need money for the fire escape repair.
I'm sorry.
I need money for fire escape repair. I do not have the estimate, but I should prior to council next Monday. I have the design drawings for the repair. You appropriated $12,000 last year. We're going to need more. So
we knew
How
that.
many
kind of
times?
limit. Pardon me?
4 times, 5 times, 7
I
times?
do not know the figure yet.
No guess?
Pardon me?
I mean, if it's only
Yes.
25,000, that's one thing, but if it's going to be
I think it's
more.
going to be a little bit more than that as a totality, but we want to look at how much we've entered into, you know, agreement
She was being coy.
with the engineer I have the plans downstairs. Now it's a matter of what the engineer's estimate will be for the repair. Has to be done, safety.
No, I know, but it's just how much?
Were you going to address the Mill Street? If you've got that one.
We're going to cover that one.
In the fairgrounds. Then the only other thing I have is, and you heard about it tonight, the Rotary-inspired accessible playground. We would like to apply for funding under NatureWorks towards this. And we have been working with the Rotary, but they really just came up with their phase. They have 1 through 4. There's about $32,000 available through NatureWorks. It is a competitive grant. We've already heard City of Nelsonville is going to be applying. That application is due February 1st. So again, this would be something that would need a requirement to suspend, amend, and what have you.
What's the match for Nature Works?
75-25, but it's a
Okay.
totally reimbursable grant.
Right.
So if we are funded, then we will indeed need the full amount of the project in there, and then once we've paid it out, we will get 75% back.
Right. And Nature Work paid for, like, the work out at Recreation Center for
The
repaving.
new roller rink and basketball courts. And,
I mean,
so-
we have
Oh,
history
we-
with them before,
Oh,
so.
Every year.
Yes, almost every year, we've gotten the NatureWorks grant, and what I was told earlier today, that we weren't going to be going for this.
I'm not sure, but that, you're the second person that's stated that to
Well,
me.
here's the third one. I spent an hour and a half on the phone on Saturday night with a Rotary member about this, so.
I'm not sure why Rotary.
I think it was,
feels
his
that
name
way.
is Romero.
Okay.
Was the one who told him at a
I've
meeting.
been working
'cause-
directly with the director and Rich Campitelli.
Well, he wasn't there.
We're
Okay.
applying for this
Okay,
funding.
fine.
If you'll allow us to do the
We
letter.
need
What I heard in this earlier conversation with the Rotary member also was that they were looking a 4-year commitment of about $25,000 a year to add ADA equipment to this South Side playground.
They do have 4 phases, and they spoke today, and I just got this PowerPoint presentation. They are looking at a 2-year project. They're certainly not looking at the city to fund that entirety.
No,
This
they're
is
not.
something that we can do for them. We can also assist, if they obtain funding, we'll assist in-kind labor and
No,
put
no,
a sign up and all that.
they weren't looking at the city for financing. They were the one who told me that the city was not going to be going for the NatureWorks grant. So they were
Somebody
prepared
needs
to
to call
look
somebody.
at more money. And this would be a gift to the city. So they pay the upfront cost, and then it would be ours to maintain.
Should have liked the fountain.
And so, yeah, I knew that there was going to be this presentation at Rotary, but I couldn't get there today. So we might want to see that
Okay.
here.
I can send you the PowerPoint presentation, all of them. And that's pretty much what they went on today.
Okay.
And it also has the quotes on their phases.
Okay, thank you. Member Bain, did you have?
I think the time is so short, we ought to just authorize NatureWorks and then sometime in the future, go for the presentation. I mean, who would turn down handicap accessible park? No one, not in this council.
And again, it is several phases. I think the first phase is about 33, was it? 33,000?
34.
So
Okay, they've
this would be a lion's share of the first phase at least, and then the subsequent phase. And again, we're not sure about the NatureWorks. It may be competitive this year just because of the entities.
I was thinking maybe non-existent.
That too, yes.
Yeah.
It's a possibility.
That's why I thought that that was my excuse to the person that called me. It's probably not any money in there. I'm sorry.
No,
It was
not
not my
everybody.
person that did it.
Not sure what-
I just spent the hour.
Okay.
Yeah, darn better.
Okay, so we'll hear some more on Monday about the various expenditures.
I'll vote to suspend on this.
Mayor, you had something?
The only other thing is, we had a presentation by the Student Center about Beautification Day in the past. You put money for that. We'll leave it
But
up
I
to
don't
you guys.
remember, I couldn't remember how much.
Usually
1,000.
1,000, is usually thrown 1,000 at it. And most of the time, they've been pretty lackadaisical about picking it up. I think last year we had to chase them down for it.
Well, that's certainly
You
not.
could have
Just forgotten.
come to me, I won't.
Well, we have that Lux
Yeah,
fund,
we only have
trust
about
fund,
3,000
and
in
that's
there.
all, that's what we're supposed to use it for, and
We did appropriate
Easy.
1,000 this year, I see in the budget, so we
that's
could use that.
probably what
for-
you had in mind, yeah.
Okay,
I don't know.
Okay.
if you
So
wish to
that-
do that.
So that will need to be an ordinance also,
It's appropriate, I
but
don't.
with no.
I want the will of
suspension.
council.
Got it.
With
What
no
if
what?
you-
With no suspension.
No suspension,
Because
no.
they came nice and early this year.
Yes, they
And he
did.
was all organized in less than
He was-
20
Well,
minutes.
Again, it's under 3,000, so I can just do it, but I just want to make sure you
Right.
guys are okay with it.
Yeah, we
you know?
are.
I mean,
Fine.
after all,
Okay.
I think,
That's
I'm
fine.
sorry, I spoke for me.
No, I would be certainly in favor of it. That would be fine. Yeah.
that's all I have.
That's all we've got.
Oh, I thought we were in
Okay.
transportation.
Transportation on the reverse side.
Flip your paper over.
Flip it. No.
But we have
Nothing
people,
on the back.
We do.
Okay.
You're clearly deprived.
We have 4 items on the Transportation Committee. I will try and be brief and to the point, one of the items will be something that we hope will be moving forward with legislation. The first item is the sidewalk inventory assessment update. You might remember earlier this year that we reported out that Public Works Director Andy Stone and the city planner Paul Logue, I've got one too many names tonight, worked on a citywide inventory of all the sidewalks using a rating system. The purpose for doing this was to move forward with a standardized system for looking at the state of our sidewalks and then also a long-term plan for repairing them. And with the goal of, we hope, repairing about 1,000 linear feet per year. This is not about new construction of sidewalk. This is remove and replace existing sidewalk that there is. And I believe, Mayor Weil, that you have a map to
Yes, if you want to
show
look
us.
at it. This is the updated assessment of various streets. I'll start at this end, or who wants to go see first? Okay. Again, really, I think he's, at the staff meeting, he actually said, here, just pass it around, that the legend's there, anything in red, of course, is in bad shape, yellow is fair, green is good, black is non-existent.
Right.
The timing is such that we wanted to get this in as fast as possible, so we need a resolution of need, I believe, is the
Of
first step.
necessity.
Necessity.
Yes.
I think at the staff meeting, Andy was talking about, and Paul Logue was talking about maybe 2,500 linear feet rather than 1,000.
Okay.
I think the only reason why I passed the map out is whether we want to do it in one section, which would be more efficient, because then you could have one area, or if you want to spread it out throughout the city. In correlation, of course, this is also being done with the Safe Routes to Schools, so some of the infrastructure will be fixed within around the school systems through that funding. I think Paul Logue was talking about is this would be almost like to cover all the bad sidewalks around, it would almost be an 8-year project if we do about 2,500 linear feet per year.
Okay, well, that makes sense
I
then.
think it's like 1,900, 19,000. What's the figure for bad sidewalks at the bottom of the legend? Chris,
Oh, I'm
Nancy,
sorry.
what is the linear feet of bad sidewalks listed?
19,481 feet.
Okay, so if we're doing 2,500 per year, it's going to take a while to do this, if we choose to do it this way. The assessment would be that we'd get some of the money back, depending on what the assessment board says. Some people would determine to do it themselves in-house or by themselves privately, and that would actually extend the monies. I think we were kicking around trying to use about 75,000 of this to do it per year. Whether we can do that or not is another matter entirely. But the idea is to start getting this done. Does that make sense? So, go ahead.
No, finish up.
No, pretty much that's all I have to say at this point.
So how much feet per year is what's being discussed? 2,500?
2,500 per year
Okay.
of bad sidewalk.
Oh, that's
Okay.
Jefferson Avenue.
At bad, correct.
Oh, this one into that.
So our intent is, with that inventory and working towards a long-term plan towards these improvements, then, so many feet per year, and if the money is available in the budget to be able to do this, move it forward. It's the resolution of necessity that we would need in place to begin this plan.
As well as, and Paula just pointed out, we also have the Mill Street project, which is slated for this year as well.
Yeah,
And
we were at the meeting here.
We had a meeting.
Okay, so that would also
Councilmember
require
Bain
the
and I
same
did.
thing for assessment of.
We were going to
project.
actually put them in the same one.
If you choose to do that. I think we
We would
discussed.
break them up after that, but,
Yeah, okay. I have no problem with that.
you know, personally, we went through this with Andy, and I
Say
said to him, why don't you just do it the most efficient way possible? Why don't you just pick out a section of town that has roughly the lineal feet and do it?
Okay, no
I mean, you
problem.
know, because he was so worried that some of us might be worried about the political implications of one part of town getting a sidewalk first, but, you know, it's a small matter. At least as far, I mean, that's not something people are going to cross area about, oh, I should say that. They're going to do anything about at all in voting. They're going to say, whoa, you're doing a sidewalk program, how good.
And would we want to consider, too, areas that are traveled highly traveled first,
students,
maybe in the uptown area where students are located, or making areas so that places are in good repair when people are trying to go to public buildings. We talked about curbs and wheelchair access near churches and other places of business uptown that might be difficult, and we get the sidewalk repair done, and this would help.
But to clarify, we always pay for the curbs and the handicap access with a fund that we put in every year.
Okay.
So everyone understands
So this would be
that.
other sidewalk.
Yeah, the sidewalks would be in addition to that kind of adjustment that would happen.
Okay, so we'll just choose a location.
Well, I
and
mean, that
start
was just
there.
my idea, because it's efficient, right? Efficient, more bang for the money.
And this is with the idea that it will then go through assessment and people would then be
They go
charged.
on the tax rolls.
Well, maybe part of this, because we're starting this process, we need to do a good amount of public education with this. And it's going to be the first one, so it's going to get a lot more press and such. So I would, maybe people will see it and they will love it, and then they'll do their own sidewalks. If they, or we can work with other people who see us doing this and kind of get the process moving even quicker.
We'll
They-
put something together.
Yeah, because if you don't go through the assessment process, they could potentially get done quicker.
They absolutely have the choice. They had the choice on Carpenter Street project. They'll have the choice on Mill Street. This is, $5 per square foot or what have you.
I think it's $30 per linear foot.
Yeah.
But I agree, it's Councilmember Fall, it's a good point to educate as many of us in the community about the process and what kind of options we have, and, utilize our public access TV to let people know what we'll be doing, what we'll be planning, but what they can do, too, as citizens. Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, just along those lines, is there a summary of the survey?
Ask Paul Logan. I think he's pulling this off a GPS, so he must have some kind of shape file.
GIS.
Yeah.
So it'd be nice to see a written, brief summary, a page or two of.
I believe he has
of the
that.
status.
Well,
Okay.
at least in this area that we're going to be working on. That,
That area hasn't been determined yet. But they just completed it this morning.
Okay. Fresh off the press.
Were there any other questions? Councilmember Kuhn, did you have a question or comment? Okay.
Okay. I noticed there's a lot of red on that map.
There's a lot of math,
Well, this-
black, too.
This is an
Quarter of a
issue.
million.
there's no sidewalk.
There's,
Yeah,
and
sidewalk
the
in my
far
place,
east
too.
side.
You know what
Yeah,
I mean.
and I'd
This
also
is
like
an
to...
issue that I get, people talk to me all about, all the time. And it's constantly. Yeah, I think that this is a real, quality of life sort of issue, so I'm very encouraged by it.
I'd also like to publicly thank the Bicycle and Pedestrian Subcommittee that worked through the plan last year for the bicycle plan, but they also came out and volunteered, I think, on at least 2, if not 3 afternoons, helping.
You won it.
It was a good time, and I learned how to use a new piece of equipment. But those other public members, they volunteered their time to walk the city streets, and I'd like to commend their volunteer efforts. It really helped move this process along, so that's great. If there are no other questions on sidewalk, we'll be moving forward then with a resolution of necessity next week.
For both.
For both the citywide, but also the Mill Street. And we are making improvements to the Mill Street area with utilities, you might remember, with a grant. And so at the same time, it makes sense to upgrade the sidewalks, much as we did with the Carpenter Street project this past year. The next agenda item is the Carriage Hill Bridge. And some of you might remember, I'm sorry.
On Mill Street, I have written down increase for engineering costs. There was something discussed at the finance and personnel. That I was taking it from your.
Whatever the staff meeting, too.
Well, I have increasing the design for Carriage Hill.
I have that too.
Okay. All right, so we will double check with
Okay.
that before we begin the resolution next week to find out if we need to increase it for Mill Street then. Thank you for pointing that out. For the Carriage Hill, some of you may remember on our annual street tour that when Director Stone took us around the city, he pointed to the bridge at the end of the Carriage Hill entrance, and we're needing to look at that to remove and replace the superstructure on that. It's estimated that we can do that in one evening. And you may also remember that because of the way the funding works from Ohio Department of Transportation, we're actually, if we can take advantage of this year, we are able to use the costs that we would have associated with this replacement of the Carriage Hill Bridge as cost share for our other project that's going on, which is the Oxbow. And so what we're wanting to do, the Director of Public Works is recommending that we increase the design engineering for the Carriage Hill as part of the Oxbow appropriation, and that's Project 247. And this does seem to make sense to move forward with this right now. Are there any questions on that? Any other comments?
247,000.
Pardon me?
247,000.
Oh, no, that's the project number 247. And I'm not sure
Which
of,
is going-
and I'm not sure of the Carriage Hill, the actual cost on the replacement of that.
Okay.
But we can get the total cost for that.
Oh, the whole, $150,000 project, sorry.
$150,000 project for $15,000
Total Carriage
per-
Hill.
For Carriage Hill, the
He still wants to
150,000.
do that this
The
year.
engineering?
15.
That would be
Engineering was
total
15.
coverage. Yeah.
Engineering is done?
No.
No.
There's your number, 15.
Okay. $15,000 increase. Okay, thank you. The third agenda item is the Small Cities application, and this is a grant application that our street department will be, or the city will be submitting, and it is due March 1. To the best of my knowledge, this is more an information item for City Council to be aware of, that the city will be applying. We do not necessarily, we do not with this particular grant need a formal authorization in the form of an ordinance. But just to let you know, we'll be applying for that.
And this is to do the area of Richland South, is that it?
That's correct. We do have a design engineering report available from TEC Engineering. They completed a draft safety study in this past December, and they're looking at a number of problems that contribute to a need for safety redesign of that area. The fact that we have 1/3 of our travelers are traveling on these South Richland Avenue. We have more pedestrian traffic, and then this is also the primary fire response route for our fire trucks. So it's critical that we move forward and we have some grant opportunities for this Richland Avenue project, and we'll be moving forward with this in the next year. What we would be looking at, the suggestions at this point are potentially new curbs and gutters, new drainage, looking also at access management, looking at sidewalks, and looking at utilities and lighting upgrades. So, the last agenda item I have doesn't require official action at this point, but is more of an information item that we're looking at legislation that we may have in the future to regulate golf carts on city streets. And it's been an issue in the city, and we need to take a look at it. So we're going to, in a very systematic way, and make sure that we're also have our guidelines correct to correlate correctly with Ohio Revised Code. But looking probably at a process where we'll have an annual fee, we'll also have an inspection of the vehicles, and then possibly also then registration of the vehicles. So they're safe and registered, and we know who they belong to, and they can be on the streets legally.
Which office in the city would undertake that?
It
In terms of the
specifically under the
licensing
traffic
and-
code goes through the chief of police establishes that.
I'm just wondering who's going to be doing the work to keep track of that. So police department.
That's the indication we received.
Thanks.
Any other miscellaneous items for transportation?
We didn't discuss, or I didn't hear Nancy, the authorizing design for the fairgrounds storm line. Basically, Andy's still
I was
trying
just
to
going to
seek
do it
money.
next week, but
Okay.
because I deferred this week because we had all that stuff
Okay.
going on. But if you want, I mean, if anyone wants to speak about it, we have a major flow problem where different actions by individuals have created a problem that has to be corrected, and I suppose it wouldn't hurt to start it through now. I just plan to go ahead and do it next week.
The next committee meeting?
Next committee meeting, and then that would delay it a bit, so. It'd be nice if we had a stormwater utility, but I think we have money in sewer to take care of it.
Eventually we'll need something about that.
Yeah,
Okay.
right after we do commercial garbage. Okay,
In a minute.
in a minute, manana.
That's it?
We done?
Done?
You guys
That's it
cutting
for
that?
the-